Sorry, I would have been started a minute or two earlier. But I needed a beer. Because when you're covering a team, you're watching a team, you're following a team that loses 3 games in a row, to fall from a 3-0 start to a 3-3 mark, 2-3, in the ACC. And it's a game like the one we saw today, and it's a game like the one we saw last week, and it's a game like the one we saw the week before that, and a game like we saw the week before that, and the week before that, and the week before that, and the week before that. You got to have a beer if you're going to talk about it, seems to me. Seems to me you're going to have a beer. So we're here on the Panther-Lair show, the Pitt football, the reaction show, the post-game show after Pitt loses at Miami. Panthers fall to the Hurricanes 31-19, lose by 2 touchdowns, did not cover the spread, did not win the game, did not do a whole lot of anything right, aside from the things they did right. And we'll talk about those. We'll talk about the positives, because I think there were actually a few positives in this game. I think there were actually a few things in this game that I would look at and say, you know what? It's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting that they were able to do this, or they were able to do that, or this part of the game was working, or what they did in this situation. There are some interesting things. There are some positive things maybe to dwell on. But I mean, how can you overlook those negatives, particularly in light of a loss? And, after the game, in the post-game press conference, Phil Campbell was talking to the media, and I was listening to that before we started the this show right here. And Phil Campbell, the Pitt linebacker, said, quote, "That's been the story of our season so far." And he was talking about how he was asked about penalties, or giving up that one bust, or this bust, or that bust, or this one play, or that one play. And he said, he was asked about having the bad plays at crucial points, and just sort of dropping the ball and not really rising to the occasion. He said, quote, "That's been the story of our season so far." And I was reminded of a text message I got during the game. I get a lot of text messages during the game. And this one text said, and I won't say who it's from, it's just from a friend, "What did you find most egregious today?" This is what this text message said. And my reply, which I will say right now, I won't read what my reply was, but my reply was, there's no one thing that was most egregious about this game today. No one issue that stands out the most. Because you could put it on penalties. You could put it on dropped passes. You could put it on questionable in-game decisions. You could put it on the complete lack of a running game, failure to capitalize in the red zone. We could go down the list of issues. And not one of those I would circle as saying that was the most egregious point in this game today. In this loss, this 31-19 defeat, there's not one point I would look at and say that was the most egregious. What I would say instead is that those are the same issues we talked about last week, and the week before, and the week before that, and we talked about them in the wins, and we talked about them in the losses, and we talked about them last season, and we talked about them the year before. And it hasn't been, it hasn't all been this since 2015. But certainly in the most recent couple of years, we've seen the same problems dog this team week after week. And sometimes they can get away with it. They got away with it at Duke last year. They got away with it in the bowl game against Eastern Michigan. They got away with it against Louisville earlier this season. And then sometimes they don't get away with it. They didn't get away with it against Boston College last year. They didn't get away with it against Miami last year, or Virginia Tech last year, or Virginia last year. They didn't get away with it against Penn State last year. They didn't get away with it against NC State this year. They didn't get away with it against Boston College this year. And today, they did not get away with it. They couldn't get away with 10 penalties or whatever it was. Let's find the final stat. I should have this right available. 10 penalties for 89 yards, plus a couple more that were declined. They didn't get away with the fact that they took multiple penalties on defense on third down. Multiple penalties on defense on third down. Miami's first touchdown drive started 15 yards closer to the end zone due to a kick-catch interference penalty on Shockey Jacques Louis. Miami's second touchdown drive saw a 3rd and goal stop at the 8, a stop, turn into a fresh set of downs thanks to a face mask penalties. Miami's third touchdown drive saw a 3rd and 8 stop turn into a fresh set of downs on a defensive holding penalty. Even on a drive Miami had in their second drive of the second half, which actually ended in an interception, they took another 3rd down penalty. 3rd and 15, they jump off sides. Now, on the ensuing 3rd and 10, they get an interception, so we forget about that. But again, one after another. What are you doing? Where is your, what do you even say? Your presence of mind? Your focus? Your discipline? You have, back-to-back procedure penalties on offense. You have 2 illegal formation penalties on defensive special teams. A field goal block unit and a punt return unit line up wrong twice. And Pat Narduzzi says, oh, you're supposed to be a yard off the ball. We were a yard off the ball. Well, apparently you weren't. Unless it's just an egregiously terrible call by the officials, and I think there were some of those in this game that worked against Pitt. Unless it's an egregiously terrible call, you weren't lined up a yard off the ball. You weren't doing what you were supposed to do. Your team lacks discipline and focus again and again. And I think if you had to ask Pitt fans, what is your biggest issue right now? Because, Pitt fans are mad. They're angry. Their team has lost 3 games in a row. Of course, they're going to be upset. Their team is coming off a disappointing 8-5 season, which followed a disappointing 7-7 season. And they're currently 3-3 with 3 disappointing, really could have won those games, losses. And if you ask Pitt fans, I think, what is your biggest issue? And some will say, it's Mark Whipple. I hate this offense. I hate that they can't run the ball. I hate this. I hate the structure of the defense and all this stuff. But I think for the vast majority of Pitt fans, they would sit down and look at it and say, they just keep doing the same stuff over and over again. They keep making the same mistakes. They keep having the same issues. You get into the red zone 5 times and score 1 touchdown, you're going to lose. You're not going to win a game if you get into the red zone 5 times and score 1 touchdown. 2 of those are interception returns that take you inside the 5, and you don't score touchdowns. Well, they scored a touchdown on one of them. They actually threw the ball from the 1 and got a touchdown. A very easy touchdown. But they get in the red zone on their 6th drive of the game, and they take a sack on 3rd down. It's a fumble. Fortunately for Pitt, they recovered. They get in the red zone on their 7th drive after the Paris Ford interception. They have a 3rd and 1, run a handoff out of the shotgun and lose 3 yards on it. 3rd and 1 from the 3. You run a shotgun handoff and lose 3 yards and have to settle for a field goal. First drive of the second half, they get into the red zone down to the 12. On 2nd down, after an incomplete pass on 1st down, they run a sweep to DJ Turner that loses 5 yards. On 2nd down from the 12. I hate to question play calling, but gee whiz, that sure seems like a bad idea. 3rd down, they're 3rd and 15, they throw incomplete, so they end up kicking a field goal. The second drive of the second half was after the Marquez Williams interception. Hell of a play by Marquez Williams, by the way. We're not going to talk about that very much, I think, in this next week, but that was a heck of a play. It's kind of like some of the things Jordan Addison did in this game. It's going to get overshadowed by all the nonsense that led to a loss, but it shouldn't, because Jordan Addison played his off in this game. He played a heck of a game. Made some great catches for Pitt after really the last couple of weeks having a few drops. Jordan Addison played outstanding. He was Pitt's best offensive player, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But Marquez Williams, incredible interception, takes it to the 1. Pitt lines up, and they actually scored a touchdown on that one. That was when the touchdown pass to a tight end. Tight end had 2 catches today. Daniel Marega coming through, huh? And then on the 4th drive of the second half, Pitt gets down inside the 20, 1st and 10 from the 19, and they take a substitution penalty. And now they're outside to the 24. Incomplete pass. Throw a little inside screen pass to Taysier Mack. I don't like the call, but the thing picks up 12 yards. They're at 4th and 3 from at the 12. They're at 4th and 3 from the 12. The score is 28-16 at this point, and they kick a field goal. First of all, you failed to score a touchdown from the red zone again. And second of all, why are you kicking a field goal when you're down 12 in the 4th quarter? This is, the very end of the third quarter. Why are you kicking a field goal? You have 4th and 3. You go for it there. It's kind of like the 2-point, the one touchdown they actually scored. They were down 21-15 at that point. They scored the touchdown. They go down 21-15. They could kick an extra point to go 21-16 and be down by 5, which is no different than being down by 6. Or you could try for 2 and potentially be 21-17. Then you're down by 4, and then another touchdown puts you up by a field goal. Why not go for 2? Why kick a field goal on 4th and 3? Here again, questionable in-game decisions. What's the logic here? And I think that's what's frustrating for most Pitt fans, is that it's the same story. They feel like they've seen this one before, when it's the same issues over and over again. And that's, I can understand where the frustration comes from, because you want to see a team get better over the course of a season, over the course of a couple seasons. You want to see a team shed some of those issues that have dogged it over the years. And instead, this team is making the same mistakes week after week after week. And it catches up to them. It bites them. And we talk about, we've talked so much about close games in this week leading, in the week leading up to this. This was obviously, a 12-point game. It's not a close game. But when you play so many close games, you're leaving yourself open to the games getting away from you. This is what we talked about. They were 19 and 17 in one-score games coming into this, coming into today. You can't keep getting away with these kinds of mistakes when you're playing close games, let alone when you're playing these kinds of games where you're actually, you're going to need to score some points. You're going to need to outscore a team like Miami who goes out and puts up 31 on you. And Miami had a couple touchdowns that, at least 1, 2, 3 touchdowns that were busted plays. 3 out of the 4 touchdowns were busted coverage plays. One where, Jason Pinnock just leaves the Pope kid wide open. 2 right up the middle of the field, the running back, and then at the end of the game, the tight end, on plays that looked very similar. Pat Narduzzi said they were different plays, but they looked like similar coverage busts. Although the one with the tight end, Chase Pine was a unique form of blocking by the lineman who was downfield on Chase Pine on that play. And Dallin Hayes, who got some run in this game and made an impact, looked good in his limited snaps, seemed to get held as well. I don't get too upset about holding calls. It's that old adage, there's holding on every play. It's when they want to call it. Some are more egregious than others. Some stand out more than others. Some you look at and say, how could you not call that? That was obvious. It was right in front of you. It's clear the ACC did not have its A-team officiating crew on this one, since they didn't announce numbers on the penalties. Who had the illegal hands to the face on offense? Anybody? I guess they did announce some numbers. I shouldn't say they didn't announce numbers. They announced that it was A.J. Davis and Jake Cradle who had the chop block. But this, and the same thing with the illegal formation on the defense on special teams. Say what it is. Illegal formation on Pittsburgh, lined up over the center. It was something. So we're not all sitting in the same. How the hell do you get an illegal formation on special teams, on defensive special teams? What's an illegal formation? You can line up any way you want. Well, apparently you can't. Apparently there's a new rule. You can't line up straight over the snapper. It'd be nice if the officiating crew would tell us that. Or the broadcasting crew would have any idea what the heck is going on in the game either. But these are all ancillary complaints. These are all peripheral complaints we can talk about on the message board and on future podcasts if we're really bored and we run out of topics to discuss. The matter at hand is the fact that Pitt is right now 3-3 instead of 4-2, 5-1, or 6-0, all of which were very attainable records if you avoid making the same mistakes. But because you made those mistakes against NC State, and you made those mistakes against Boston College, and you made those mistakes against Miami, you are 3-3 instead of 4-2 or 5-1 or 6-0. I remember playing Little League Baseball, and we'll get to some comments here. I'm going to talk about Joey Yellen and some other things. I remember playing Little League Baseball, and you reach a certain age. There was the C team was the youngest, and then B team. You played a year of B team, and then your second year of B team, you could try out for the A team, which was the older team. And if you made it, you were on the A team, great, but they only took a certain number of players, 12 or 15, something like that. And if you didn't make the A team, you moved back down to B team for another year. And you try it out again the next year. B team and A team, there was overlap in the ages. So the first year I tried out for A team, I'm not an athlete. I'm not very good at these things. I enjoyed playing baseball, but I mean, I'm a lousy baseball player. So I didn't make the A team the first year. It's fine, whatever. I play on B team. I was like an older kid, you know what I mean, a year older than most of the kids on B team. So it was great. I was like the pitcher. I was dominating. And I mean, I wasn't dominating. It still sucked, but I distinctly remember this one time this kid threw this high outside pitch. And for some reason I swung at it. And I probably did that because I was terrible at baseball. And I hit this high outside pitch and just ripped it down the right field line. I mean, just pushed the crap out of that thing. Got like a triple, or maybe even I might have had a home run out of it. Like I say, I was playing against younger kids, so you look like the man. For the rest of my young baseball career, which was not very much longer, just a few more years, I swung at every garbage, trash, high outside pitch because that one time I got away with it. And you know what happened every other time I swung at that garbage, trash, high outside pitch? I missed, and I swung and I missed. Or maybe I fouled it off. I didn't get another rope down the right field line. You can get away with doing the wrong thing. And just because you win, just because you have success, doesn't mean that you made the right decision. Doesn't mean that you did the right thing. And if you keep doing that thing, it's going to catch up with you, and you're going to lose games. Or in my case, strike out. And so, Louisville game, bunch of the games last year, Pitt roped that high outside pitch right down the right field line. Never should have swung at it. Never should have made those decisions. It was a mistake. It was a mistake, and they got away with it. Now, 3 games in a row, not getting away with it. Big personnel news of this game here. Joey Yellen, starting quarterback, played the whole game except for one series where Davis Bevel ran a 3-and-out on the third drive of the game. But Yellen gets the start. Let's bring up his stat line real quick here. 22 of 46 for 277 and a touchdown. He replaced Kenny Pickett, who was hurt in the Boston College game. Every person watching on TV could see that Kenny Pickett was hurt in the Boston College game pretty severely. Comes back in. He's got his ankle taped up. We play coy all week. Pat Narduzzi plays coy all week about how, doesn't know if Pickett's going to play, feels pretty good about the health of the team. Kenny's really tough. Kenny didn't even make the trip. He didn't even fly down there. And I don't think it changed one GD thing about Miami's defensive game plan. When the report came out before the game and when Pitt announced that their travel roster and Kenny Pickett wasn't on it, you think Manny Diaz was scrambling back to the whiteboard? Oh, guys, we gotta scrap the whole plan. We gotta change everything we were planning to do. Come on. You think it made one lick of difference what Miami did defensively in the red zone? Seems like it probably didn't change much. I'm not really sure what big advantage you gained out of that, out of playing coy about Kenny Pickett's injury. And even in the postgame today, Pat Narduzzi said, I don't know, we'll see if Kenny can come back. I'm sure he'll be back ASAP. Well, ASAP means as soon as possible. And what's possible is probably not this week, this coming week against Notre Dame, and not until after that off week that follows that. But so they go with Joey Yellen. Had a choice between Yellen and Bevel. Apparently they like Yellen a little bit better. Yellen got the call last week when Pickett got hurt at Boston College. He handed off 2 times. This game, I think it took a little while for Yellen to get into a rhythm. He was okay on the first drive. Made some nice passes. But then he had to get a feel for the game. I gotta be honest, though. If you're the kind of person who tries to look on the bright side of life, if you want to find things that make you feel good about the future or the present, or the very near future being 6 days away, 7 days away, I gotta be honest. I think Yellen looked pretty decent. Even good. He's not a mobile threat the way Pickett is. But this was against a pretty aggressive pass rushing defense with very good defensive ends. I thought the pass rush held up relatively well. All things considered, given what those guys usually do against good pass rushers. And Yellen certainly got sacked a couple times and had a fumble, really 2 fumbles, and he managed to hold on to one of them. But I thought the pass blocking held up relatively well, and I thought Yellen did pretty well in those situations. I thought he handled himself pretty well and made some nice passes. Like I say, he's not the mobile threat that Kenny Pickett is, but he was able to move outside the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, and throw. I was impressed. I liked what he did. I liked the touch on his passes. He seemed to have a good feel for the receivers and getting the ball to the receivers and putting it out there for them. He certainly got the ball to Jordan Addison a lot, which I think is an important thing. I think Addison ended up with, where was his numbers here? He had 8 catches for $147 on 13 targets, averaged 18.4 yards per reception. Now, he had a 55-yard catch that helps, but, 5 passes to Shockey Jacques-Louis, who I thought played really well other than the drop that he had. 2 catches for Daniel Marega. Taysir Mack had a couple catches. Jared Wayne had a big 26-yard catch. I liked how he played. I liked what Yellen did out there. I thought that was positive. And if they need to give Kenny Pickett extra time to get healthy, I say give it to him. I think you've got a good option in Joey Yellen, who gives you a chance to win. I think Yellen could give them a chance to win. Overall, I thought he played well enough to win the game. He didn't call. I don't think he checked into a shotgun handoff on 3rd and 1, near the goal line. It wasn't his decision to kick a field goal on 4th and 3. Or kick the extra point instead of going for 2. That wasn't Yellen's call. I thought he played well. I thought I was encouraged by that. I don't know about you. The other personnel move they made on offense, Todd Sibley got the start, so I'm glad I talked and wrote a lot about the youth movement at running back, how Vincent Davis, and Izzy Abanikanda had clearly moved to the top of the heap with the running backs. I'm glad I wrote that earlier in the week, and Sibley comes out and gets the start. Picks up, he ran the ball 4 times, though. And he averaged 5.8 yards per carry. He had 23 yards on 4 carries. And looked pretty solid. Now, I thought he was getting some good blocking on that first drive. But they just didn't go to him. And I've been one that kind of has felt like, Sibley's just not. He makes some plays out of the Wildcat, but he's not really an every down back that the coaches seem like they want to rely on, that they believe he can carry the load back there. Well, maybe give him more than 4 carries and find out. A.J. Davis gets 7 carries for 21 yards. Vincent Davis, 9 carries, a net gain of 0 yards. Izzy Abanikanda didn't make the trip, so he's apparently dealing with an injury issue. Pitt had said they have no COVID-19 protocol absences, so it's not that. But, I don't know. I'm not sure what else Todd Sibley could have done. I thought he acquitted himself nicely in that role, and they only give him 4 carries. It's questionable. I'm not really sure I understand it. But, overall with the offense, it's the same story as before, right? They can't run the ball. They have no running game to speak of, and they can't score touchdowns out of the red zone. They go, 1 touchdown on 5 red zone trips. It's not hard to figure out. It's really not. And defensively, multiple busted coverages. Not a problem of the structure of the defense. It's just bad execution. And I think there are, and this isn't to defend the coaches, but the coaches didn't design a defense that left Mark Pope wide open on the sideline for that 1 touchdown. The coaches didn't design a defense that left the running back and then the tight end wide open down the middle for a touchdown. Now, maybe they are way too geared up to stop the run, and that's part of the problem with those plays. The play action and the RPOs are able to work. But I don't think it was necessarily structural problems that led to those plays. Those were busts. Poor plays. I thought the front 4 was outstanding. And I'll bring up their stats here real quick just to take a quick glance. Let's see. Patrick Jones had 5 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. He didn't have any sacks. Rashad Weaver had 4 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. John Morgan had a sack. DeAndre Jules and Dayon Hayes, both young guys getting some serious playing time in a big ACC game, split a sack later in the game. Kalijah Cansey was making an impact. He recorded 1 tackle for loss and only 3 tackles, but I thought he played really well. I thought those guys up front, John Morgan, I thought played well. I was impressed with the front 4. Thought the linebackers were okay. This wasn't really, I know the defense gave up 31 points. I attribute those to just dumb mistakes, which is its own issue and not something that we should necessarily excuse, because that does speak to either preparation or coaching or discipline and focus. But it's not like they were getting beat due to the structure of the defense. It's not like they were getting beat due to just physically outmatched, man-to-man type of, they're just better than you. This defense is good enough, and I thought they played well enough overall, save for those mistakes. If your offense can get into the end zone a few more times on its 5 red zone trips, this game looks a little differently. But here again, I mean, I'm saying the same thing that I said probably after the Boston College game, probably after the NC State game, probably after the game after game after game, because it's the same issues that we continue to be talking about. All right, we do the live stream here, and this was the, the advantage of the live stream is that we can sit back and have a little conversation. And, definitely a lot of people here on the live stream, and we appreciate that. If you listen to the podcast later in the week, or you listen to this podcast on Sunday or whenever it is, we get together. We'll get together after these games and talk like we did after the Boston College game. We'll do this from here on out. I think even the home games, instead of the drive home podcast, we'll do this live stream podcast, and you can have the conversation, and you can jump in and join the conversation here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com is where we stream this thing. And I appreciate everybody who's here. I'm just going to start scrolling through these comments. You also have an opportunity to be a super chatter if you want to really get your comments seen. So look for that option. Luca Carroll says, started things off with the right way. Sigh. Good luck this week on the message boards. And yeah, I mean, the boards have been rough the last couple weeks, and it's not going to be any easier this week. So I appreciate it, Luca. I appreciate your condolences, I suppose. Jason Martell says, on a positive note, I thought the O-line pass blocked very well. Run blocking, we know the story there, but nice job by Yellen today. He's not as mobile as I expected, but he did well today with no run game and some drops. Yeah, drop passes were a problem. I mean, they had some crucial drop passes. Shockey Jockler, we had a 3rd down drop that was really a brutal play that hurt them, and it wasn't the tight ends. I guess I would say that about the drop passes. It wasn't the tight ends today, but Pitt's wide receivers, I mean, it's just too inconsistent. Jordan Addison was great, but the wide receivers overall just too inconsistent. Brock Madonic, can you please answer why Vincent Davis is the starter? Like, seriously, play Todd Sibley, period. I think Sibley has earned a better look. You know what I mean? I think he's earned a higher volume of plays than he's gotten so far. I think he showed that today. They put him into the regular offense, not the Wildcat, handed it off to him, and he made a few things happen. He drugged some defenders with him. He's got a little bit of power to him. You might as well. You're not getting anything else going with the rest of your offense and when you're running game. I think Vincent Davis can do some things. I think Izzy Abanikanda is good, although he wasn't there today, so he's got something going on, dealing with an injury of some kind. But I mean, you might as well give Sibley some opportunities and find out what he can do. Steven Perdziola, apologize if I mispronounce your name, Steven, but Panarduzzi said he didn't know why Todd Sibley didn't get more carries. How can a head coach be so disconnected from the offense? And, I actually asked him that question. I asked Panarduzzi, I said, look, you gave Todd Sibley the start. What went into that, and why didn't he get more than 4 carries? And, yeah, Panarduzzi said that he's not necessarily involved in the substitutions, and I think this is probably an operational thing. That, you get a peek behind the curtain sometimes when coaches will mention things. You get a sense of how it actually works, kind of operationally on the sideline. I think the position coaches tend to make those calls on who goes in. If they keep Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver in, that's largely Charlie Partridge's call. Not totally independent, but largely his call. And I think Andre Powell has some responsibility, certainly in concert and with Mark Whipple. Andre Powell has some call on which running backs go in. I think that at some point, I mean, you are Pat Narduzzi, you are the head coach, you know that Todd Sibley made some things happen. And it has to occur to you, hey, Sibley hasn't really been getting any run since he started the game off so strong. Why is that? You have to step in. You have to have that responsibility. That is your responsibility. You're the head coach. And I think I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if that's an acceptable answer. And Rummy says, what's the potential for Mark Whipple to get fired after only 2 years? I don't know if Whipple's going to get fired or not. I'm not sure what Pat Narduzzi is going to decide to do there. I know that one thing I said throughout Sean Watson's final year in 2018 was that, look, the way Pitt's offense was performing is the kind of performance that will get a coordinator fired. And if the offense didn't improve, then Watson could be putting his job in jeopardy. We're at a point where you would probably say the same thing about Mark Whipple. I don't know what Pat Narduzzi will choose to do, but I think if he were to make a change after this season, you would look at it and, I mean, like the stats look like the stats of a coordinator who's not long for this job. I mean, that's the simple truth. I mean, it's the performance. We talked about how many games have been lost because the offense just couldn't score enough. Games where the defense played well enough to win, and the team couldn't get the victory because the offense was insufficient, ineffective. I mean, there's too many games over the course of last year and then this season so far through 6 games. A season and a half of games, and there have been too many losses, almost every loss, because the offense just didn't do enough to win. The defense did enough to win, and the offense fell short. As far as the only after 2 years question, Sean Watson got fired after only 2 years, so I don't think the length is a concern. Let's see here. Josh Newark says, legitimately didn't play poorly, but I think we all recognize Narduzzi isn't the answer. I don't necessarily fire him now, but man, this was supposed to be the year. Yeah, I think, Josh, the problem is, yeah, I mean, I can look at a lot of elements of this game and say, well, Pitt played pretty well. I think Joey Yellen was pretty good. For his first start at Pitt, I thought he did a decent job. I thought Jordan Addison played really well. I thought the pass blocking held up relatively well. I thought Pitt's defensive line had a great game and really put pressure on De'Aaron King and made it difficult for him. I thought Pitt's secondary, made some crucial mistakes, but didn't get beat as much. Sort of just like 1 versus 1 type of situation like they did last week with Zay Flowers, you know what I mean? Or some of those guys for NC State. I think overall it was, I think overall it wasn't a terrible game for this team. But the problem is kind of, which I think you're getting at, Josh, and kind of like I said, is that you just feel like you're seeing the same issues week after week. And it's not just that, oh, they're just not great at linebacker. You could have a team where week after week, but a linebacker weakness gets exposed. You know what I mean? I think that was the case in 2017 or 2018. Their linebackers weren't great, and they got taken advantage of. And this is just an example of where you would put it on a position group that just needs to get better. This is a case where there are these sort of broader issues that could generally be lumped under discipline and focus. Whether we're talking about penalties, we're talking about drop passes. I mean, a lot of things I talked about last year. And it's penalties on both sides of the ball. It's drop passes, the busted coverages. And you say, why isn't this a more well-oiled machine? And I think I think you can understand in year 6 why you'd be asking those questions of why isn't this a more well-oiled machine? And I think that's a legitimate question. I think it's fair. Jason Martell says, give me Sibley and A.J. Davis at this point. Vincent Davis is talent and can be used situationally, but with this line, he's not the best option. I mean, brother, with this line, nobody's the best option. And Todd Sibley got the runs he got. He had one play that I can think of where he really used his size and physicality to move the pile. But, I mean, his 12-yard run was a giant hole was opened up for him to cross the Red Sea. Vincent Davis would have gotten at least 12 yards on that play as well. I think Izzy Abanikanda maybe has the highest ceiling out of all of these guys, but he's a liability in pass protection, so that's a problem. But it's not. We could haggle about which running back should be playing. We could go back and I talked about Todd Sibley a lot earlier. But I mean, we could go back and forth about who should be out there and how they should be lining up. But the reality is, if this line's not going to block better, if they're not going to execute better in their run blocking, then you're not. It doesn't matter who you put out there. You could put out me and you, Jason. You and me could go out there and play, and it's not going to change anything. You know what I mean? We're not going to have any less success than those guys. You could put Barry Sanders out there, and he's not going to have a whole lot more success than those guys. And I'm talking Barry Sanders like when he was good, not now when he's like 60 or something. Because the run blocking is just not good enough for whatever reason. Let's see here. Bobby Fitzmaurice says, for a veteran team, once again, they played undisciplined football, too many penalties and busted coverages. And yeah, I agree, Bobby. I think that is a problem. It's year 6. This is a team that's been built over the past 5 years, 6 years. It's a team full of veteran players, a team full of players who've been around for a long time. They've been a part of a lot of big wins and part of a lot of bad losses, but they've played a lot of snaps. They're not relying, particularly on defense, they're not relying on a lot of guys who don't have much experience. Servassier Dennis is probably the most inexperienced guy that they're rolling out there, and he's been one of their best defenders so far. We legitimately, in the last week, had a conversation about whether he's one of the top 5 players on the team. This is coming off like a 4.5 tackle for loss game at Boston College, but, we legitimately had that conversation, and he's one of the most inexperienced guys they're rolling out there. Kalijah Cansey is one of the most inexperienced players they're putting out on the field, and he's playing great. He's having a very good season. In addition to, your Patrick Jones and your Rashad Weaver and some of these guys who are really excelling. But the mistakes... It just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. And you ask these questions of like, why is this happening? Why is this team making these mistakes? Why is this team lacking in discipline and lacking in focus? Why does this continue to happen with a team that, quite frankly, given the personnel, given the experience, given the talent, it shouldn't happen? And this guy, Colin Towle, chimes in. It says, this team really fooled us this year. I feel like I've watched the same game 3 weeks in a row. The play calling, penalties, drop passes, inability to run the ball is never ending. And that's right. Exactly, Colin. That's the thing of this team. You said right at the start, this team really fooled us this year. And I agree. I came into this season with expectations just like you did. And maybe you read some of the things I wrote and those of us who cover the team wrote. And developed your own expectations based on that. But I don't think any of us were aiming too high for this team if we said, boy, they should go into that Miami game no worse than 5-1. They potentially could go into the Miami game no worse than 4-1 and potentially go into it 5-0. I think that was legitimate. And when you look at how the games played out, they very well could have gone into this Miami game today 4-1 or 5-0. And they probably should have gone into this Miami game 4-1. Or 5-0. But they didn't. And the fact that they didn't, the fact that they've fallen so far short of the expectations, I think, it really helps raise the questions. It raises those questions. Let's see. Dale Gribble says Kenny Pickett and James Addison are the only 2 offensive players that are D1 caliber. I don't know about that, Dale. I think Joey Yellen looked pretty decent today, and I think James Addison's brother Jordan had a heck of a game, so I would include him in that list as well. Let's see. A lot of talk here about Heather Lyke. I don't see what the point is on that. Let me, as we scroll down through the comments, everybody's in the comment section having a conversation about Heather Lyke and what kind of decision she's going to make. Look, Here's the thing, and I may end up being completely off base about this. Okay, I've said this before. I said this on the podcast this week. I think when people ask questions about it, I'll say it again. Okay, I think it's very difficult in 2020 with a pandemic that canceled March Madness and has done significant damage to the financial. Just to the significant damage to the finances of universities and institutions of higher education. These schools are scrambling for money. These athletic departments are scrambling for money. People are getting laid off and furloughed and fired. No, not fired, but laid off and furloughed because there's not enough money to turn around and pay millions of dollars to make a coach go away. So you can then follow that up by paying even more millions of dollars to bring a new coach in. It's very tough to stomach that in 2020, given the current circumstances and the situation of college football. I don't have an opinion right now on whether Heather Lyke should or should not fire Pat Narduzzi. I tend to stay out of those firing or not firing opinions. But I think that's a tough sell. I think it's a tough sell to pony up that kind of cash when you're in the situation you're in. And I don't know if Pitt has laid off or furloughed many people, but I mean, this is what's happening across the country. And certainly Heather Lyke, she has shown a proclivity for spending, right? I mean, she's not shied away from investing funds in an athletic department. She did it at Eastern Michigan, spent them over the brink, some might say. And she's certainly taken on a chunk of financial responsibility, you would say, with the Victory Heights project. And so Heather Lyke doesn't seem to be scared of going into the red if need be. But I think this would be a tough one. I think this would be a tough one to stomach if you were to try and make a move on a head coach who's owed money. Let's see here. Roman donated $5 to the chat stream as a super chatter. I appreciate that. He says, take this $5 and give it to Heather Lyke toward Pat Narduzzi's buyout. Yeah, that's one way to do it. I can't promise that we will pass that money along. I'm not sure that we can earmark it for that. I don't think that will be my move with that, but I appreciate the sentiment, Roman, and we appreciate you contributing there on the super chatting. That's good stuff there. Let's see. Let's scroll down through the conversation here as we look. Got a lot of comments. Everybody's got something to say. Breezewood Sheets says Tim Salem, Mark Whipple, and Dave Borbley need to be shown the door. I mean, those guys you would think are on something of a hot seat. I mean, their position groups are not playing well. You know what I mean? The offense is not doing well. That's on Whipple. The offensive line still can't run block. That's on Dave Borbley as the offensive line coach. But I mean, Borbley was also the offensive line coach in 2018. And I'm very much aware that you can't rest your laurels on previous seasons. You can't rest on your laurels of previous seasons. And just because you did it well a couple years ago doesn't mean you're going to do it again or that you should get a free pass because of it. I don't think Dave Borbley forgot how to coach offensive line. It just, for some reason, it's not working this year, and it didn't work last year. Maybe that's a matter of Borbley coaching to Mark Whipple's offensive system. I don't know. But it's, you would think that there's some crosshairs with him. And Tim Salem, I mean, hey, tight ends had a nice day today. 2 targets, 2 catches, touchdown. We'll bash the tight ends plenty in the future. We'll take a little break here for a second. Let's see. Scrolling through a lot of the same conversations here. Everybody's saying a lot of the same thing. Tom Slivka says, please address my question. Tom, I don't see your question. Let's see. I'm not sure what your question is there. So I missed it, Tom. But we do have the option. You can become a super chatter in the live streams, which will draw a little more attention to your questions, and we will definitely get to those. So if you want to look at that option, let's see here. Paul Moore chimes in. Thanks, Paul. Says, thanks for your hard work and always appreciate your coverage. Yeah, that's a good way to get your comments seen. So we definitely appreciate that. Let's see. I mean, final thoughts here as we wrap this thing up. We've gone about 45 minutes. The thing is, Grant Nieport says Jared Wayne needs more snaps. I agree. I agree about that, Grant. I think that's, I think Jared Wayne has played really well. Sorry, I got distracted there for a second. I think Jared Wade's a good option. I think he's got size that the rest of this receiving core doesn't have. He's gotten bigger. He was tall last year, but I feel like he's filled in. He's really kind of a big, sort of thick, wide receiver that looks good. I'm really impressed with him, and I think they do need to get him the ball right now. I think Jordan Addison's your number one. And then you have a group of like Taysier Mack, Jared Wayne, Shockey Jacques Louis, who right now Wayne feels like he's at least as reliable as those other two guys, the upperclassmen, and maybe even more reliable. So, I would give him the ball. I would keep him in the rotation. You know what I mean? At least in the top 4, if not in the top 3. I think he looks good. I'd like to see Jalen Barden get a little more action out there, but he's getting just a few snaps and like one target a game. It's not exactly a whole lot of not anything real exciting. You know what I mean? And it's not enough to really build on. He needs more action. I think he can really stretch the field. He's got the speed to do it, but it needs. He just needs more plays. You know what I mean? He needs more targets. A couple more questions coming in here. Yeah, Josh Newark points out Jared Wayne had a drop today. You're right, Josh. He's done that from time to time. He also had a great catch to pick up a first down. I think he played pretty well. I think he's a good player overall. He needs to get more consistent, but who on this team doesn't? Let's see. RJ Seaman 38 says, Chris, what do you need to see happen to take pressure off Pat Narduzzi outside of wins? For me, I'd need to see Mark Whipple fired. What do you say? I mean, look, it's not atypical, and it certainly wouldn't be the first time for, if we get to the end of this season and it doesn't go well and it doesn't keep getting better, or if it doesn't improve, to see somebody take the fall. And if it's not Pat Narduzzi, maybe it is Mark Whipple. Oh, the offense let you down again? All right. Then Whipple has to go. That's you've seen that play out in sports, not just college, but NFL, Major League Baseball. I mean, assistant coaches get fired when the seat gets hot for a head coach. And if this season continues on its current trend, I'm not saying that they would go 3-8, but if it continues on its current trend and it's 6-5 or something like that, which would be a 3-2 finish, which, I mean, no, it wouldn't be good. There's no way to get rosy on that one, or sugarcoat that one. But if it finishes 6-5 or 5-6 or something like that, and they don't want to fire Pat Narduzzi, they want to keep him around, then, well, I mean, somebody takes the fall. Somebody takes that responsibility, and very well could be Mark Whipple. He could be the guy who gets it. So that might be what it takes to help, like you say, to take some pressure off Narduzzi, I guess. But the biggest thing they need to do now is, I mean, they need to try to win games. They need to turn this around. They need to get more focused. They need to get they need these guys to play better. You know what I mean? They need to coach better, and they need to prepare them better. And that's kind of, like I said, this is sort of, we'll wrap up on this thought. You keep saying the same issues week after week, and we see it, I see it, you see it. The coaches have to see it. The players have to know it. At some point, you have to fix these issues. And even though they've been going on for the better part of 2 years now, if not longer, you have to find a way to fix them. And it's not just, so the run game, maybe they're never going to be able to run the ball for a couple of years. Maybe they're just not going to get better at that. But they can get better at taking penalties. They can get better at dropping passes. And, I guess you would get better at not taking penalties. You would get better at not dropping passes. They can get better at those things. You can go back to the drawing board on your red zone offense to figure out what you can do to get the ball into the end zone once you get inside the 20. I think you can work on those things. I think you can improve those things. You can get better in those areas. And that, I mean, that's the difference between wins and losses for this team. Different teams have different barriers to success. Different teams have different things that are holding them back. For this team, those are the areas. Your penalties, your drop passes, your red zone offense, and your defensive busts. Just plain out, just making dumb mistakes. Get your team more disciplined. Get your team more focused. And then go out, and you can avoid games like this if you just have some more focus, if you have some more discipline. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy fix. I don't know how you do it, but you're a coach getting paid millions of dollars, or in the case of coordinators or assistants, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And your job is to get these guys to get their heads out of there, where, and make the plays that they need to make. Nothing extreme, nothing extraordinary, and maybe that's one of the more frustrating parts of this whole ordeal is that not asking you to be superstars, just asking you not to screw up. Catch the ball when it's in your hands. Don't commit penalties. But maybe it's easier said than done. For this team, for the last year and a half, it has been easier said than done. All right, I appreciate everybody tuning into the live stream. Appreciate the people jumping in on the super chat. That's good stuff, and we'll keep that up. We'll have our regular podcast on Tuesday night, 8:30. I guess we start. We'll find new things to talk about. We won't just keep saying all the same things over and over again. We'll find new ways to say it, so it sounds unique and different. And then we'll try and get ready for this game against Notre Dame and see what Pitt is able to do against the Irish. Going to be another challenging game, although I think as we're talking here, Louisville is giving Notre Dame everything it can handle. So we'll see what Pitt is able to do in that one. In the meantime, stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com. We'll have plenty of conversation and discussion and content, articles, all those things. I mean, we'll keep writing about this team. We'll keep talking about this team, and I think you'll keep watching this team. So let's do it together. Let's try to make sense of it all together. Panther-Lair.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Make sure you come in on Tuesday night, 8:30. We will be live for another Panther-Lair show. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, folks. Have a good Saturday night. Get a beer, relax, get the fire pit going, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday. Thanks.